Hey everyone, Irene Line here. Welcome to this video, to this channel, and to this entire world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. I wanted to cover the topic of POTS today. This is the abbreviation for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a long one. So postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I'll break down what that means in a second. But I've been getting the question a little more recently, asking me and my team if the work that I do with you guys via my online programs can help with POTS. And the overall answer is yes. And of course, everyone is different. So it really depends on many, many factors. But we have had students in our programs heal and recover from this disorder of the nervous system. It really is a disorder, a syndrome of the autonomic nervous system, and I'll break that down in a second. But yes, and usually when someone is living with something like POTS, they've also got some other stuff going on. Sometimes it's chronic illness, sometimes it's digestive troubles, migraine headaches, trouble sleeping, trouble with chronic anxiety, trouble thinking, brain fog, you name it. These things tend to cluster together. But to understand POTS and understand how this work that I do might help shift it and alleviate it and rewire it, we need to understand just a little bit about the nervous system and our survival responses and how these get stuck. Now, I have done so many videos on this topic, so you can go back into my archives and look up other videos on fight, flight, freeze and the nervous system and all that stuff. But here's a quick crash course. So basically, we have got this body of ours, and there are two main nervous systems. One is the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and the other is the peripheral nervous system. And that basically means away from the brain and spinal cord, so on the peripheral edges. And there are different peripheral nervous systems, but one is the autonomic nervous system, also dubbed the ANS. And that one is the fight flight, so the sympathetic get up and go nervous system. And it's also the parasympathetic, which is sort of the slowing down nervous system. It's not the calming down nervous system. And I'm not going to get into the whole branches of the parasympathetic. Be sure to watch my videos and Q&As on the polyvagal theory. Those ones will give you a better understanding of this PNS, this parasympathetic nervous system. It's actually a very important and complex one to understand, but we'll leave that for other videos. Be sure to check those out. So again, this peripheral nervous system of ours has this autonomic nervous system. Then it also has our sensory motor nervous system. So I have a empty cup here with nothing in it. And for me to pick this up and feel that it's not scalding hot and feel the weight and know how much energy and action and reach to pick this up and know that I can pick it up and touch my face, it's not going to burn me. I am sensing and I'm using my motor skills to manipulate and maneuver this cup. Now, if I were to drink out of this, if there was still liquid in it, and this liquid would then move through my body automatically. So my autonomic nervous system kicks in to facilitate the uptake of said liquid into my stomach and into my intestines. It takes out the water if it needs it for hydration. If it doesn't need it, it creates urine and we pee it out. So that is a very quick crash course in the different branches of our nervous system. So again, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, and then peripheral nervous system is this automatic nervous system, as well as our sensory motor nervous systems. Now, that was a lot in a few seconds or a few minutes. I have other videos that get deeper into those. So really, if you're new here, be sure to watch those. I'll post some below. Now, the other thing to understand about the autonomic nervous system is it also governs our survival. So most of us have heard of fight, flight, and I think freeze is starting to become more common known. But if I am faced with a massive threat or stressor, I may fight, go into fight mode. I might flee to get out of harm's way. Or if I can't fight and I can't flee, I will go into this more freezy, shutdown, collapse, which is a part of the parasympathetic, whereas the fight flight is sympathetic. It's high revving, go, 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 fight, protect, and then the branch of the parasympathetic that puts us into shutdown, it also is protective. We need that online. Now, this is where it gets complicated in relationship to POTS. And I'm also going to add in here that this video and how I'm speaking about these systems, phenomena, and the illnesses that come out and then the healing of them is also true for migraine headache, Raynaud's, IBS, Crohn's, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, something called RSD, which is more known as regional pain complex syndrome, severe PMS and menstrual troubles. So anything where there is this inflammation and this cycling, and this will make sense in a moment, cycling between high levels of sympathetic fight, flight, go, 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 protection, fear, bracing, I gotta get out of here, I gotta run. So high levels of sympathetic coupled with high levels of parasympathetic shutdown, freeze, collapse. And so in a system, human system, we want to have fight, flight, and we want to have freeze, but we don't want to maintain a cycling of this fight, flight, and freeze indefinitely. So I'm now going to put a pause and then go back. So I mentioned those other, some people would call them illnesses, conditions. To me, in my world, and my colleagues, we call them syndromes, which is a cluster of symptoms. But I wanted to just mention those because often then I'll get the question, well, Irene, what about IBS? Irene, what about migraine? Irene, what about these other things? And they all kind of connect in the same way. But if we think about POTS, so POTS is something that we would get diagnosed with if we are fainting a lot. Often a person will go from sitting or lying and they'll stand up, and what will happen is there will be this lightheadedness, this dizziness, the blood pressure kind of freaks out. It doesn't know what to do, and the heart rate just skyrockets. It goes up, hence tachycardia. That's the T in POTS. To try to regulate, to try to match the shift in postural tension in the posture. And in a system that has good autonomic regulation. So again, remember I talked about this autonomic nervous system, part of the peripheral nervous system, governs our fight, flight, freeze, but also I mentioned the thing with drinking liquid. It also, I forgot to mention, governs our heart rate, our blood pressure, our immune system, our hormone release, our sleep-wake cycles, all of these autonomic processes that we don't have to think about. It regulates that. And so what we know through a lot of research, specifically the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, I've done an audio on that in the past. I'll link it below if you want to learn more about that. What this really showed, and this research has been ongoing since the late 80s, and it's been shown all around the world in many different studies, is that when we are brought up in an environment where there is a lot of fight, flight, and freeze in the milieu, if you will, in the environment due to abuse, due to being in just a really, really bad situation growing up, whether it's the family or in your war-torn country, even if a little one has to go through massive surgeries when they are young. And I mention that because this is often an early trauma that's sort of skipped over. Adoption, anywhere where a little one, a little infant, cannot feel truly cellularly safe, where they are on guard, but then they go to the point of they can't keep up the guard in the fight flight, and so the system goes into shutdown, it goes into collapse. but under that is this sympathetic charge. And so I paint this early trauma picture and this idea of an environment being unhealthy and not cultivating good autonomic nervous system regulation in that infant, in that child, in that teenager, even in the growing in utero. When there is intense threat and stress and uncertainty and this bad things are always going to happen, that system does not gain good nervous system regulation. They go on in life, maybe quite successfully. However, they're riddled with these symptoms, with these pains, with these digestive upsets, with these anxieties, with these depressions, with these byproducts to cope with that, such as addiction, getting into bad situations all the time, not being able to move forward in life due to this lack of cognitive ability because their nervous systems, fight, flight, freeze responses are running the show. And so when this fight, flight, freeze is always present, 24/7, even in low level, it taxes the entire physiology, and especially for some people, the cardiovascular system, the ability for the autonomic nervous system to regulate the pressure dynamics within the circulatory system, hence the blood pressure. And so some people have a genetic predisposition to, say, having bowel problems, others more mental health problems, others more addiction problems, others other problems, right? It's so specific to us and our genetics. And then there's this concept of POTS where we are moving our body through space in different positions, but the regulation processes, the regulatory systems, this autonomic nervous system, if it is concerned with fight, flight, and freeze, and it's just living in a state of perpetual fear, shock, terror, collapse, it's not going to know how to properly regulate and bring homeostasis to the system when it goes into different positions, like from lying down to standing up. And then there's this feeling of faintness, and sometimes people will faint, they will pass out, and that is actually a protective response because the system realizes this pressure isn't doing what it needs to do, so we're gonna put in a kill switch and put that person out and have them faint. To use an example of fainting in a different context, a lot of people I know might have a fainting episode when they see something they don't like. Often it's gory stuff, often blood, that kind of thing. I don't have that problem, but a lot of people do, and I respect it. And it's an intense visual, and that person cannot make sense of what's happening internally, and the system is actually going into a survival response, high level of fight, high level of flight inside. Even though they may not be wanting to run or feel the need to run, everything goes up so fast, and the system goes, we can't handle this intensity, we're gonna shut you down, we're gonna put you into a collapse. And then that's where the fainting or the wooziness comes in. It's a autonomic dysregulatory issue going on that is impacting the cardiovascular system. So it's like we're turning this around. While if we read things on the websites of PubMed, and I picked up one from, I think it was John Hopkins here on my computer, they're really seeing POTS as a circulatory condition, a disease, if you will. And while that is what it looks like on the outside, what I know from my work and learning through the Somatic Experiencing lens and the work of Peter Levine and all of my mentors is that there's actually this underlying dysregulation of fight, flight, freeze running the show, always on, and then it's impacting the circulatory system, and that's where the trouble is being seen. This is the same thing that happens with, say, chronic digestive troubles, where there is this, just to give you an example of a differing condition syndrome, where the system, it wants the good flow. Like take my glass of water, I drink, or I eat food. We want things to go in one direction and in a nice, smooth, even opening and closing of the vessels, the sphincters, digestion, breaking up the food, going through the small intestine, the right gastric juices get released at the right time, goes into the colon, it takes out water, we create feces, we poop it out, all these things. That's like this nice flow. That would be in a nice regulated system. But if we think of dysregulation of the system, there might be moments where there's fast, 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 quick, quick, quick. And then all of a sudden the system gets a blip of shock, fear, stops it, everything shuts. Stuff is wanting to go, but then the valves close. And then the system cycles, and then there's boof, big, big flow, big dilation, it goes, and then there's stopping. And this is what people with chronic digestive troubles will say. There is this cycling of explosive diarrhea and constant chronic constipation. Of course, with that brings pain, discomfort, inflammation, and then trouble with assimilating our nutrients and micronutrients. So that's one example. And then another example, I'm going to give you one more so you can see how this isn't just circulation with something like POTS. And then I've just given you the example with the digestion. It's also similar with migraine headache. There is this dilation and contraction of the blood vessels throughout the skull, the brain. And again, it's this cycling of high sympathetic with shutdown. And so rather than this nice perfusion of blood and nutrients and taking waste products out, there is this kind of disjointed symphony that doesn't sound very well, and it's just chaos. And then that chaos hurts, and that's why we then feel things like the pain of the headache. It's the same with pain in other parts of the body where the circulation is poor, and maybe there's just this incapacity, or this lack of capacity, I should say, to take out waste products and bring nutrition to the joints, to the tissues. I could keep giving you all sorts of examples for healing the immune system, but I won't. I hope you're getting the picture here. So to go back to POTS, there is this dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system that is impacting the circulatory system, and then the person is feeling these symptoms of dizziness, lightheadedness, fainting, maybe heart palpitations, and of course the high heart rate, which is trying to figure out what it needs to do. It's basically the circulation is going into a bit of a panic mode, and then it shuts down if it can't find that way out, so to speak. In terms of working with this and healing this, I can't give you all the steps in this video. That would be impossible. It'd be like trying to teach you how to do brain surgery through the video. But the things I will say is it comes back down to building capacity within our somatic system, our nervous system. I did another video on this a little while ago. I'll post that below, or I'll pop it on here so you can see a little clip of it if we've got it when we edit this video. But we want to build capacity. We want to build the ability to feel our body, to be with these fight, flight, freeze responses, to even know what they are, why they might be there. This is where education is super duper important. We want to be able to understand, why is my body in this fear response? Why is my body shutting down? Why do I have all this clamping and constriction around my heart, around my belly? Am I worried? Is something going on in my environment that is stressful? There's definitely a lot of stress in the world right now. So is there something occurring on my external that's impacting my fragile, organic, empathetic system that feels everything that's going on, and I'm reacting to the current world? Or is this an old stressor, or a series of old stressors and traumas that are trapped in the system? And this is often the case I see with our students. It's old stuff, and the person doesn't even know that this survival energy, fight, flight, freeze, is living inside. And then often what occurs is something triggers the system to go into a little bit more stress, and then this is where these syndromes like POTS can pop out. Often, not always, but often, this isn't something that we are born with, and we know at like a deficiency, or say a true disability where we're born without a limb or we're born without a sense. Usually these things like POTS and migraines and IBS, they crop up as we age. And depending on the stress level in that human and their circumstance, they might end up with this younger, and some might end up with these things older. I did do an interview with one of our students, Elizabeth. I'll pop that below also, where she talks about her journey going through one of my programs, the 21-day nervous system tune-up course, and how her symptoms of POTS and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue just really did disappear. They went away, they healed by her working with her nervous system, by her working with her capacities within. These, remember I mentioned a second ago, or quite a few moments ago, those different branches of the peripheral nervous system, if you can recall, as a bit of a test. There is the autonomic nervous system, which is fight, flight, freeze, and they govern the digestion and the circulation. So there's that, but then there's that sensory motor when I gave you the example of the cup. So part of the work in these courses is learning about that stuff, the autonomic nervous system, and all of how it connects, but also working with our body, working with our movement, working with our ability to sense and feel and change our intention and attention. And we do that through movement. We do that through guided lessons that teach you how to get into this neurology and how that neurology connects with the body and how it connects with sensing these stress responses. So I won't get into her whole story. It's a great story, so I'll post those below, as I said. But she and many of my students have healed from these, what would be considered diseases that you just have, and you have to manage the symptoms. And I say, and my colleagues say, especially in this world of somatic experiencing and working with these syndromes at this deep level, is we want to, again, get under the symptomology in the syndrome and look at the root cause. What is causing the nervous system to be on alert all the time, or on shutdown mode, or usually with these syndromal cases, both at the same time are happening. Very important to understand that and work at that level. So overall, this concept of POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, is, in my opinion, it can be healed. From what I've seen, of course, everyone is different. Everyone's circumstances are different. We do need to factor in things like nutrition and hydration and mineral balance and all of that. That is not my expertise. So you can look for other sources around those pieces elsewhere. There's obviously so much on the internet. But usually a lot of my students and clients, they've got their diet down pat, and they're still having these troubles at this syndromal level. So I'm here to say, yes, this stuff can be shifted. Yes, it can be healed. Of course, everyone is different. Everyone's story is unique. And of course, in order to get under these pieces, you got to work, from what I've seen, at this nervous system somatic level. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. I will post a couple other pieces, one article on chronic illness, and I talk a little bit more about the ACE study there. I'll also post the link to the audio that talks about what the ACE study is, how it was uncovered. It's really, really quite fascinating. And then I'll post another video on how somatic symptoms like pain and palpitations of the heart and headache and all these things, how these are created as a result of stored trauma. So consider it a continuation of this video. Again, hopefully this has been useful and given you some information into understanding POTS and these other syndromes a little bit better. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.